one of the ones that's been seen by the most people, I think somebody who saw me on these things put together a video called "Peter Schiff Was Right," and over 1.6 million people have now seen that, and it just features me arguing with the pundits on CNBC and Fox News, warning about the crisis, and everybody just laughing at me and dismissing me like I was from another planet. Yet all the predictions I've made have come true. So I think if I can go to Washington, D.C. and try to convince the bureaucrats there to listen to me instead of Ben Bernanke or Timothy Geithner, people who have never gotten anything right in their entire careers. And one thing I know, I've tried as a private citizen to get my voices heard in Washington, right? They had recently had a panel to look into the cause of the financial crisis, right? And I called them up, I sent them emails, said, you want to know why there's a financial crisis? Buy my book. It was only $16. It's a lot cheaper than this panel. Right? Or why don't you bring me down? Why don't you bring me down there to be a witness to testify? Instead, I've paid to speak all around the world. I've spoken in Saudi Arabia. I spoke in Poland in an economic conference. And why did they want me there? Because I predicted the economic crisis. So the Poles in Poland knew enough to figure out that I predicted the crisis and pay to get me to Poland. The guys I offered to go there myself for free, right, and speak to Congress. No, they don't want me there. They only want the people who were completely blindsided by the economic crisis. They want the guys that helped cause the economic crisis. When it first hit, and they were talking about bailouts and stimulus, I was on national television almost every day. I was on Anderson Cooper 2 days in a row when they were talking about the TARP, saying to vote it down, saying to let these firms fail, that the country would be better off letting these guys go broke. We did not have to bail them out. A lot of people now are against the bailouts because it's popular. But who was against them back then, when they were popular? I know I'm running out of time here. But anyway, so the difference is I'm not a politician, I'm a businessman, and I'm an economist. And I understand the problems that we have in this country, and I understand that they're made in Washington. They're not made on Wall Street. They're not made on Main Street. And we have a real economic crisis coming. If we keep stimulating, if we keep printing, if we keep bailing out, within a couple of years, we're going to have a currency crisis. And what that means is the dollar is going to collapse, and the cost of living is just going to run out of control. We're going to have inflation much worse than the 1970s. We're going to have sky-high interest rates. So if you think the economy is bad now, just wait a few years and you see how bad it's going to get. I think it's important that I'm in Congress when that happens. There isn't a single senator who understands what's going on. There's one guy in Congress that I know that has a clue, and that's Ron Paul. And I actually started getting back into politics 2 years ago. I was his economic advisor for his presidential campaign. And unfortunately, his campaign didn't take hold back in 2008. But I'm very happy to see that he just won the straw poll in CPAC. He beat out Mitt Romney, who had won 3 years in a row. So things are changing. The Tea Party movement is changing. That really encapsulates everything that I've been saying for years. You can see that in the Tea Party. So I think I'm the guy to go to Congress and actually get this done. I'm not going to Washington to fit in, to get reelected. I don't even want to be elected initially. I'm only going there because the professional politicians have screwed it up. So I want to go there. I figure I got 6 years to turn the situation around, and I'm not going to stop until I do. So I'm not going to try to fit in. I'm not going to make friends with these guys. I'm going there to hold the Senate accountable for what they've done and persuade them to put the national interest above their political interest, and to stop looking for the expedient short-term solutions and actually do the things that need to be done. And then I can go back to my job in the private sector and give someone else a chance. Thank you.
Yeah, let's try to keep it brief if we can. Andrew, go ahead.
Just one suggestion, a policy suggestion. If you do get elected to Washington, and you mentioned about consolidating and eliminating government departments, one of the things that I think is redundant in Washington is that we have a Department of Defense and a Department of Homeland Security, which I read a book by Richard Clark, a former security officer, that says ultimately it's inefficient. There's turf battles. Kind of just put them back into one department.
Yeah, look, what is national defense but homeland security? I mean, that's what we're securing, the whole land. That's the point of having national defense. Look, government tends to grow. You know, we've got to stop it. You know, and I think the most effective way to stop it, and what I really want to do if I get in the Senate, is I want to lead the charge not to increase the debt ceiling. You know, we have a debt ceiling, and every time we get to it, we just raise the ceiling. I mean, what kind of ceiling is that if you keep raising it? But what I want to do, if I can lead a filibuster in the Senate and say no to increasing the debt ceiling, they've got no choice. They have to cut spending. They can't raise taxes because you have to pass a tax increase. So if they can't borrow money, they can't spend it, they have no choice. They have to cut. So if you put their backs to the wall, see, they always say, well, we have to raise the debt ceiling or we'll shut the government down. Shut it down. Otherwise, right now, they're shutting the country down. I'd rather shut the government down.
We have one more question. Jim.
How are you going to convince the people of Connecticut that the last place we ought to send Dick Blumenthal is to Washington?
Well, that should be easy. We live in Connecticut. Look at this. Look at what he's done here. I mean, I think, look, Dick Blumenthal is an ideal opponent for me. I mean, it's going to be almost as fun as running against Chris Dodd. The thing is, nobody likes politicians, and no one likes lawyers. And he's both. And look at what he's done. I mean, what has he done in the 20 years that he's been in, you know, he's the second highest ranking elected official in a state that is, you know, per capita the most indebted of any other state. He's part of that. He can't abdicate responsibility. Look at his department. It's grown like a cancer. Do anyone know how many lawyers are now working in the Attorney General's office compared to when he first started? So what is he going to say? Send me to Washington because I specialize in growing government and suing people? Like, yeah, we're in an economic crisis. We're going to sue our way out of this mess? You know, the lawyers are part of the problem. I mean, part of the problem is we need tort reform. I mean, you know how many frivolous lawsuits I got going on? You know, one of the biggest problems with employers is you're afraid to hire somebody because there's a million ways they can sue you, especially if you have to fire somebody. So part of the solution to the problem is less lawyers. Right? We don't, you know, it's like he's going to try to say, send me to Washington so I can do for Washington what I did for Connecticut. That's not a winning message. Right? Hartford is a mess. Connecticut is a mess. Right? We need real change. We just can't take a career bureaucrat out of Hartford and supplant them into Washington and expect anything to change. It's only going to change if you send somebody like me. Because believe me, I'm not going there for any other reason but change. The problem is you get a lot of Republicans who can talk the talk, but they can't walk the walk because in their hearts, they're politicians. And the minute they get to Washington, they like it. Right? They want to stay there. They like the power. They like the perks. And so you know what? They throw their principles out the door if they ever had any, and they act just like Democrats. That's not me. I don't want to go to Washington. I'd rather stay in Connecticut. My kid's in Connecticut. You know, I'm going to be commuting, you know, long commutes every weekend back to Connecticut so I can see my kid because I can't move him there because he lives with my ex. So, you know, this is not what I want to do. And so when I go there, it's not to sell out my principles. It's to bring those principles to Washington and make sure that everybody else who abandoned them gets them back. Because like I said, you know, I was disillusioned with the Republican Party a long time ago. I mean, I was a big supporter of Ronald Reagan. I had a poster of him in my college dorm when I went to Berkeley. Right? And you know, and the worst part was I'd bring girls up there at night and it would kill the mood. You know, when George Bush Sr. came in, they lost me. The party lost me. And then I went libertarian, and now I'm back. Right? Because I want to change the Republican Party and bring it back to those roots that got me. And this is the way to do it. And maybe if I get there, I can, you know, I'm going to be in the same building as these guys. They're right down the hall. They can't avoid me. I can knock on their doors and get in their face and tell them how high the stakes are. And if you think I can talk here, imagine me in a filibuster. Tune in every day to watch it. And I am going to get stuff done. You know, I have a website, SchiffForSenate.com. You know, you can, check it out. You can research me on YouTube or Google, and if you have any questions on the issues, just feel free to submit them.
Thank you, Mr. Appreciate it.